All right, this is the RX 6600 in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and I did just download the new driver update, which is supposed to give a lot of performance boost, like over 20% on some cards in this game. So I would recommend you double check that you get the new drivers if you're playing on AMD. Now you'll notice that my frame rate here doesn't seem that amazing. Well, this is really more of a 1080p graphics card. And, well, what settings are we playing at right now? We're completely maxed out at 1440p, which just isn't a very good decision on this graphics card. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we can do. So 1440p max settings. This game has a resolution scaler, but it jumps in like 25% increments, which is honestly just kind of silly. I would love it to just be a slider. And so we're not going to use that. But we will test out 1080p, but let's just go, if we were going to be playing at 1440p, we would definitely not want to use these maximum settings. And Ultra performs very similarly. The only difference is these settings going down to high instead of Ultra, and has very little performance impact. So we're going to try going down to the high settings. Now you can actually see the game load things in at high versus Ultra, and you can see in the image there that things don't look considerably different between the two settings, although you can also see the frame rate counter increase quite a bit by going down to high. So we can see now that at 1440p high, I'm certainly not locked to 60 FPS, but on my variable refresh rate screen, 50-55 feels worse than 60, but not by any means unplayable. So I really do think that this game would be playable at 1440p high settings, although it still wouldn't be my recommended settings for this game. So, what would be my recommended settings for 1440p on this graphics card? Well, I think we should go ahead and try out the medium settings. I really like that this game has a lot of performance gain between the different settings. It's very adjustable. So if we go down to medium, again, you can take a look. You'll see a big visual difference. The biggest thing is look at the grass in the distance over here as we switch that down, right? So you lose a lot of draw distance, but we'll also notice a massive performance difference. It's also switching the anti-aliasing to FXAA, and there's honestly a few things that you should probably turn back up, like anisotropic filtering, if I pronounced that right, which doesn't have a huge performance impact. Honestly, a lot of these things could probably be turned back up, but this I'm just going to benchmark, not really optimize here. So we're just going to use the presets. You can see that at 1440p high settings, sorry, not high, but medium settings, we're actually getting quite high frame rates, and this game is completely playable on the RX 6600 at 1440p. You just lose a bit of draw distance on that grass for the most part. I still think this game looks fairly good at the medium settings. Certainly nothing to worry too much about if you have to play at medium. I think the game looks fine. But as you go down to low, things do start to look significantly worse, but you do gain even more performance. So before we drop down to 1080p, let's just say, okay, what if you wanted to have a very high frame rate? Well, if we go down to low, once again, notice another massive decrease to the draw distance. That's where most of the performance benefits are coming from here, although some other things definitely get turned down as well. We are now well over 100 FPS at 1440p, although I would definitely say sticking to the medium settings make a whole lot more sense, because it was still very, very playable, very good frame rates, but looked significantly better to my eye than going down to these low settings. There's also a very low preset, but well, let's go ahead and take a look at it, but not for very long, because I don't like looking at it. It's quite ugly. So we're at 1440p, very low. Frame rates are quite good. So this game, once again, is extremely scalable, which I like very much. But the very low settings definitely take a hit to the visual quality. Should I kill the last? Let's kill the skeleton. All right, let's switch over to 1080p and let's max things out again and turn him down from there. So swapping on down to 1080p, and we can jump on up to the maximum settings at 1080p, actually apply those settings, and away we go. So maximum settings at 1080p, and away we go. Something about the maximum settings to my eye looks a little bit blurry in this game, to be honest. Like in the distance, I don't know. In some ways, I think high actually looks a bit better than maximum in this game. I don't know why. But actually, it looks like at 1080p, this is a game that we can max out. Oh, although, whoa, wait a second. Maybe not. I turned around, and suddenly our performance was significantly worse. So I take that back. You could play it maxed out, but we're definitely not going to just lock 60 FPS completely maxed out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch down to Ultra, which, like I said, doesn't have much visual or performance difference. It really just turns these two things down to high, from what I can tell. Let's see if looking this direction, yeah, it still drops us below 60. So I'm going to say that ultra settings are not going to be where I want to be at 1080p. Certainly playable, you could certainly do it. But I have a feeling if we go down to high, we're going to really be in the sweet spot. So high settings, looking this direction, we're up into the 80s, and looking at this more difficult view, looks like we are still in the 70s, staying well above 60 now. Everything feels very smooth in motion. I am quite happy with the performance here. Again, high compared to ultra. Honestly, whatever at ultra makes the game just look a little bit fuzzy to me. Honestly, I think it looks a bit better at high. Although I'm sure there's some particular setting that I'm just not liking the look of that I could isolate if this was more of an optimization video. I don't have too much time for that, guys, because today there's another game launching. I mean, by the time you watch this video, it'll already be out, but Ghostwire Tokyo is coming out in a few minutes as of my time of filming, which means I want to switch over to benchmarking that game as well. So not as much time to do some off-screen optimizations and bring them to you, but we can at least test out the presets. And I could say that I think just playing at 1080p high settings is going to be a good experience on the RX 6600. But for the sake of completeness, let's not stop there. Let's go ahead and try out medium settings. So 1080p medium settings, we once again take a fairly large hit to like the visual quality and the draw distance. You can see the grass not reaching to the castle anymore, all of that. But the performance now, if you're somebody who just, I want to play first-person shooters well over 100 FPS, you can absolutely do that at these medium settings. Seems to be no problem whatsoever. I think if I go towards the building, we're gonna get some more skeletons. I want more skeletons. Can I? No more skeletons?
Yes, girl. You're picking up what I'm putting.
No more skeletons. Oh, man. All right, well, I was going to do a little more combat at these settings, but I think we've basically locked it down. At 1080p medium, your performance is through the roof. It's going to feel good, and if for some reason you wanted low settings, yes, the FPS can go higher, although it seems a little bit unnecessary. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and take a quick look at the very low settings at 1080p for the sake of completion. Hey, you can make your game look bad if you want to play it at 200 FPS. Although it won't lock to 200 if we stare at this direction. All right, guys, hopefully you found this useful for you. Is that? Oh, I thought it was a skeleton for a second, but that's not. Okay, I hope all of you have an excellent day and take a look at my maybe Ghostwire Tokyo benchmarks here coming out soon as well. I actually don't know what order I'll upload these in. Have an excellent day.